Del Rio, Texas. June 1988. The temperature hits 115 degrees Fahrenheit by noon, the kind of heat that makes the air shimmer, that makes breathing feel like inhaling fire, that turns metal into weapons that burn your skin on contact, the kind of heat that kills cattle, that drives people indoors, that stops life, but not film production, never film production. The Lonesome Dove crew has been shooting for 6 weeks. They're making a miniseries based on Larry McMurtry's Pulitzer Prize-winning novel, an epic Western, 4 nights, 8 hours of television, the most ambitious Western production in decades, and they're shooting it the hard way, on location, in the actual Texas-Mexico border region, in the actual desert, under the actual sun. Robert Duvall is 57 years old, playing Augustus McCrae, a retired Texas Ranger. Gus, the role of a lifetime. Charming, wise, funny, tragic. Everything Robert has spent 35 years learning to do. But the role requires something else, something beyond acting, physical endurance, mental toughness, the ability to work in conditions that would break most people. Today they're shooting the cattle drive sequence, 12 hours of filming, actors on horseback, herding actual cattle, in authentic period costumes, heavy wool, layers of clothing, hats, boots, everything designed for historical accuracy, nothing designed for survival in 115-degree heat. But what nobody knows yet is that today we'll test Robert Duvall in ways no role ever has. The call time is 6 a.m. Robert arrives at 5:30, always early, military training. Be ready before you're needed. He's already wearing his costume. Gus McCrae's worn leather vest, faded shirt, on a bandana, hat pulled low. He looks like he stepped out of 1880, looks like he's lived this life. The first assistant director runs through the day's schedule. They need to shoot 6 major scenes: cattle crossing a river, confrontation with bandits, a long dialogue scene around the campfire, riding sequences, close-ups, wide shots, everything. They're behind schedule, need to make up time, need to push. Robert listens, nods, doesn't complain, never complains. That's not who he is. You show up, you do the work, you don't make excuses. By 8 a.m., the temperature is already 95 degrees. The crew is sweating through their clothes. The horses are restless, sensing something wrong. Animals know. They understand heat in ways humans forget. They understand danger. The director, Simon Windsor, calls for the first setup: cattle crossing the Rio Grande. Why Robert and Tommy Lee Jones, playing Woodrow Call, need to ride into the river, guide the cattle across, stay in character, make it look effortless, make it look like these men have done this 1,000 times. They ride in. The water is warm, offers no relief. The cattle resist, don't want to cross, become agitated, start to scatter. Robert and Tommy work to contain them, actual cowboy work, not acting, just doing. Staying on the horse, controlling the animal, managing the chaos, this is where everything starts to go wrong. They shoot the scene 7 times. 7 times riding into the river, 7 times herding cattle, 7 times in full costume under climbing sun. By the 7th take, Robert's shirt is soaked through, not with river water, with sweat. His face is red, flushed, breathing heavy. The director calls cut, says they got it. Moving on. Next scene. Confrontation with bandits on the ridge. Robert has to ride hard. Chase sequence, then dismount. Fight, dialogue, physical action in direct sunlight on exposed ridge. No shade, no cover, just rock and dirt and sun. By 10 a.m., the temperature has hit 105. The crew starts to struggle. Grips are rotating out, taking breaks, drinking water constantly. The director orders extra water stations, medical personnel on standby, everyone watching everyone else, looking for signs, heat exhaustion, heat stroke, the things that can kill you before you realize you're dying. Robert is still working, still in character, still giving everything. He's done 15 takes of the chase sequence, riding hard, pulling on reins, stopping the horse, dismounting, over and over. His hands are shaking, just slightly. Most people don't notice. But Tommy Lee Jones notices. He's worked with Robert before, knows him, knows this isn't normal. Between takes, Tommy approaches, asks if Robert needs a break. Robert waves him off, says he's fine. Just catching his breath, they need to keep moving, they're behind schedule. Tommy isn't convinced, but he doesn't push. You don't tell Robert Duvall how to do his job. Wait, don't miss this detail. What's actually happening to Robert's body right now? Heat exhaustion progresses in stages. First, heavy sweating. Robert passed that stage an hour ago. Second, weakness, fatigue, dizziness. Robert is there now, but he's ignoring it, pushing through, the way he's always pushed through. The way his military father taught him, pain is temporary, quitting is permanent. Third stage is more dangerous, confusion, rapid heartbeat, nausea. The body beginning to shut down, starting to protect vital organs, sacrificing everything else. Robert is approaching stage 3, 11 a.m. Temperature hits 110. The director calls for the dialogue scene. Robert and Tommy sitting by a campfire, talking about the old days, about choices made, roads not taken. It's a crucial scene, the heart of Gus McCrae's character, his regrets, his wisdom, his understanding that life is about what you did, not what you wanted to do. They set up the shot, build the campfire, real fire, for authenticity, for the light, for the smoke, adding more heat, more difficulty. But it looks right, looks real. That's what matters. Robert sits by the fire. The heat is overwhelming. Fire heat on top of sun, heat on top of ambient heat. His vision starts to blur, just at the edges. He blinks, clears it, focuses. The director calls action. Robert delivers his lines. Perfect, exactly right. The tone, the rhythm, the meaning behind the words. He's Gus McCrae, not Robert Duvall playing Gus McCrae. Just Gus, living, breathing, being. But halfway through the scene, something happens. Robert's words slur. Just for a second. He catches himself, continues. But Tommy sees it, the director sees it. Something's wrong. They finish the take. The director calls cut, starts to say they got it, starts to move on. Robert stands, takes one step, his legs buckle. He doesn't fall, just staggers. Catches himself on the equipment case. His face has gone from red to pale. Gray. The color of someone whose body is shutting down. Tommy is there immediately, grabbing his arm, calling for medical. The set medic rushes over, checks Robert's pulse, too fast, checks his pupils. Dilated, checks his skin, dry, no sweat. That's the danger sign. When you stop sweating in heat like this, you're in trouble. Real trouble. You haven't seen Robert Duvall's biggest challenge yet. The medic makes the call. Heat exhaustion, severe, possibly progressing to heat stroke. Robert needs to be taken off set, cooled down, rehydrated, hospital evaluation. The production shuts down, insurance protocols. When the lead actor collapses, everything stops. They load Robert into an air-conditioned van, rush him to the nearest hospital, Del Rio Regional Medical Center, 20 minutes away. The longest 20 minutes of the production. Tommy Lee Jones rides in the van with him, holding a cold compress to Robert's head, talking to him, keeping him conscious, keeping him focused, the way you do with someone who's starting to drift, when starting to let go. Robert keeps saying he's fine, just needs a minute, just needs some water. They need to get back to set, they're behind schedule. Tommy tells him to shut up, tells him he's not fine, tells him the schedule doesn't matter if he's dead. At the hospital, they run tests. IV fluids, core temperature measurement, 103.2 degrees, dangerous, not quite heat stroke, but close, too close. Another 30 minutes in that heat and Robert would have been unconscious. Another hour and he might not have woken up. The doctor is clear. Robert is done for the day, minimum, possibly done for several days. Heat exhaustion this severe requires rest, recovery. The body needs time to reset, to heal. You can't just push through. That's how people die. Robert listens, nods, waits for the doctor to leave. Then starts asking about getting back to set. The nurse thinks he's joking. He's not joking. This is where Robert Duvall's real struggle begins. The production manager arrives at the hospital, explains the situation. They've lost the day. Tomorrow's schedule is now impossible. They'll need to reorganize, reschedule, figure out what scenes they can shoot without Robert, how to keep the production moving while he recovers. Robert asks what time it is, 2:30 p.m. They stop shooting at noon, 2.5 hours lost. He asks if his scenes are rescheduled for tomorrow. The production manager says no. Robert's off for at least 3 days. Doctor's orders, insurance requirement. Robert sits up, pulls the IV from his arm. The nurse protests. Robert ignores her. He tells the production manager he'll be back on set in 2 hours. They can shoot the remaining scenes this evening. Cooler temperatures, easier conditions, they won't lose the day. Everyone thinks he's delirious, still affected by the heat, not thinking clearly. But Robert is thinking perfectly clearly. He's thinking about the production, about the schedule, about the crew that's sitting idle, about the money being wasted, about the commitment he made when he took this role, about showing up, about doing the work, about never being the reason something fails. The production manager tries to explain. The insurance won't allow it. The doctor won't clear him. It's not possible. Robert says, then find a way to make it possible. 2 hours later, against all advice, against all protocols, against everything that makes sense, Robert Duvall signs a medical waiver, takes full responsibility. He clears the production of liability and gets back in the van. But this is the most shocking part, what Robert does when he arrives back on set, 5 p.m. The temperature has dropped to 98 degrees, still brutal, still dangerous, but survivable. Maybe. The crew is stunned when Robert walks onto set. They thought he was done, thought they'd lost him for days. Some thought they might have lost him permanently. Heat stroke kills people, especially people his age, especially in conditions like this. But here he is, walking, steady, focused, ready to work. The director pulls him aside, asks if he's sure, really sure. They can reschedule. They can work around him. It's not worth the risk. Robert is sure. They're losing light, losing time. They need to shoot. He's ready. They set up for the remaining scenes. The director changes the schedule, puts Robert in shade where possible, keeps scenes shorter, adds more breaks, stations the medic right next to camera, everyone watching, everyone ready to stop if Robert shows any sign of distress. They start shooting. Robert delivers. Every scene, every line, perfect, exactly what's needed. You cannot tell he collapsed 3 hours ago, cannot tell his body is still recovering, cannot tell he's running on pure will and nothing else. Between takes, Tommy Lee Jones watches him, finally says, "You're the stubbornest son of a bitch I've ever met." Robert smiles, says, "Gus McCrae would have done the same thing." Tommy shakes his head. "Gus McCrae is fictional. You're going to kill yourself for a TV show." Robert's smile fades. He says, "It's not about the TV show. It's about finishing what you start. It's about not being the weak link. It's about showing up." He pauses, then adds, "My father was career military. You know what he taught me? Pain is weakness leaving the body. Quitting is permanent. You can rest when the job is done." Tommy says, "Your father never worked in 115-degree heat." Robert says, "Yes, he did. In the Pacific, World War II, jungle combat, heat and humidity that killed more men than bullets. And he didn't quit, didn't complain, just did his job. That's what you do. That's what I do." This is where everything changes for everyone watching. They finish the remaining scenes by 9 p.m. 6 more hours of work. Robert never wavers, never asks for a break, never shows weakness, just does the work. Scene after scene, take after take, professional, committed, present. When they wrap for the day, the director calls it, "Thanks, everyone." Special thanks to Robert for coming back, for pushing through, for making it work. The crew applauds, spontaneous, genuine, not for Robert the actor, for Robert the professional, the man who collapsed and came back, who refused to let them down, who showed what commitment looks like. Robert doesn't acknowledge the applause, just nods, heads to his trailer. Inside, he finally lets himself feel it, the exhaustion, the pain, the toll the day has taken. He sits down, drinks water, lots of water, knows he'll be hurting tomorrow, knows this wasn't smart, wasn't safe, but was necessary. Because Lonesome Dove isn't just another job. It's Augustus McCrae. It's the role he's waited his whole career to play. And you don't let roles like that down. You don't let the character down. You don't let the story down, no matter what it costs. The next morning, Robert wakes up feeling like he's been hit by a truck. Every muscle aches. His head pounds. His body is telling him he's an idiot, that he's 57 years old, that he nearly died yesterday, that he should rest. He shows up to set at 5:30 a.m. 30 minutes early, like always. What you're seeing right now is nothing. Robert Duvall's real test is just beginning. The production continues. 6 more weeks in Texas, temperatures consistently over 100 degrees. More river crossings, more riding, more physical demands. Robert never misses a day, never complains, never asks for special accommodation, just shows up, does the work, pushes through. The cast and crew start calling him the Machine, not as mockery, as respect, as awe, as recognition that they're working with someone operating on a different level. Someone who's made a commitment that transcends comfort, transcends safety, transcends common sense. Tommy Lee Jones later says, "I've worked with a lot of tough actors. Robert Duvall isn't tough. He's something else. He's made of something different, something that doesn't bend, doesn't break, just endures." August 1988. They finish filming. Robert has lost 15 pounds. His skin is damaged from sun exposure. His body is exhausted. But Lonesome Dove is complete. 8 hours of television. Epic. Beautiful. True. Everything it needed to be. February 1989. Lonesome Dove airs on CBS 4 consecutive nights. The ratings are phenomenal. Over 26 million viewers per night. Critics call it the best Western ever made. Call Robert's performance legendary. Augustus McCrae becomes iconic, one of the great characters in television history. Robert Duvall wins his 3rd Emmy Award. His acceptance speech is brief. Thanks Larry McMurtry for writing Gus. Thanks the crew for their work in impossible conditions. Thanks Texas for not killing him. That last line gets a laugh, but Tommy Lee Jones, sitting in the audience, doesn't laugh. He knows how close that joke came to being reality. Backstage, a reporter asks Robert about the heat, about the collapse, about coming back to set 2 hours later, asks if it was worth it. Robert thinks about the question, about what worth it means, about cost and value and commitment. He says, "I collapsed because I pushed too hard. That was my mistake. Coming back was my choice. Some people think that was stupid. They're probably right. But I didn't do it for heroism. I did it because that's the job." The reporter asks him to explain. And everyone learned the truth, but the real shock was Robert Duvall's reaction. Robert says, "Augustus McCrae is a Texas Ranger, former Ranger. These men rode through heat that would kill horses, fought Comanches, survived conditions most people can't imagine. And I'm going to play that character and then quit because it's hot," he continues. "I'm not saying what I did was smart. It wasn't. It was dangerous. It could have ended badly. But there's a difference between smart and right. Smart would have been staying in the hospital, resting, protecting myself. Right was getting back to work, finishing what I started, not letting the production down." The reporter pushes back. "But your health," Robert interrupts. "My health is my responsibility, my problem, not the production's, not my castmates, mine. And I decided the risk was acceptable. Was it the right decision? I don't know, but it was my decision." He pauses, then says something that becomes famous among actors, something that gets quoted for decades. "In this business, you're replaceable. Always. Every single one of us can be replaced. The only thing that makes you irreplaceable is reliability. Showing up, doing the work, being someone people can count on. That day in Texas, I had a choice. Rest and become replaceable. Or push through and prove I'm someone who finishes. I chose to finish." The reporter asks, "Would you do it again?" Robert doesn't hesitate. "No, I was lucky. Could have died. Could have caused permanent damage. It was stupid. But I understand why I did it, and I respect that version of me even if I think he's an idiot." 2010, 22 years after Lonesome Dove. A film student interviews Robert for a documentary about the making of the miniseries. They've brought footage of that day. June 1988. You can see Robert collapsing, see the medics rushing in, see the panic. They show him the footage, ask what he remembers. Robert watches quietly, then says, "I remember thinking I was fine. Remember being angry that we were stopping. Remember feeling like I was letting everyone down." The student asks, "Do you remember the pain?" Robert shakes his head. "I don't remember pain. I remember heat. I remember my vision going weird. I remember being confused why everyone was so worried. That's how heat exhaustion works. It sneaks up on you. You don't realize you're dying until you're almost dead." The student asks the inevitable question, Knowing what you know now, would you have stayed in the hospital? Robert thinks for a long time, then says, honestly, I don't know. Part of me says yes, the smart part, the rational part, the part that wants to live to 90. But another part, the part that was driving me that day, that part says no. That part says the work matters more than the worker. The story matters more than your comfort. Your commitment matters more than your safety. He pauses. That part is probably wrong. Probably destructive. Probably the reason a lot of actors burn out, die young, sacrifice everything for roles that will be forgotten. But that part is also the reason Lonesome Dove works, the reason Gus McCrae feels real. Because I wasn't acting. I was living it, suffering through it, enduring it, just like Gus would have. As security approached, Robert Duvall turned around. The student asks one final question. What do you want young actors to learn from that day? Robert considers this carefully, then says, don't learn from that day. Don't use me as an example. What I did was dangerous, unnecessary, stupid. You don't need to nearly die to give a good performance. You don't need to sacrifice your health for authenticity. But, he pauses, choosing his words carefully, I also want them to understand something about commitment, about finishing what you start, about being someone people can rely on, not to the point of self-destruction, but enough that when things get hard, when conditions are difficult, when every instinct says quit, you find a way to push through. The line between commitment and self-destruction is thin. I crossed it that day in Texas. Shouldn't have. Got lucky. But I also know this. I've never worked on a project where I didn't give everything, where I held back, where I protected myself at the expense of the story. And that commitment, that refusal to quit, has defined my career more than talent, more than luck, more than any single role. So learn the lesson, but learn the right lesson, not nearly die for your art, but finish what you start, not ignore your health, but push through discomfort, not be reckless, but be reliable. 2024, Robert Duvall is 93 years old. Lonesome Dove has been on streaming services for years. New generations discover it, fall in love with Gus McCrae, write to Robert, thank him for the character, for the performance. One letter stands out, from a young actor, 28 years old, working on his first major film, struggling. The conditions are difficult, but he's exhausted, wants to quit, wants to ask for a lighter schedule, wants to protect himself. But he watched Lonesome Dove, learned about the Texas heat, about Robert collapsing, about coming back 2 hours later. And he doesn't know what to do. Doesn't know if he should push through or protect himself. Doesn't know where commitment ends and self-destruction begins. Robert writes back. The letter is short, simple, but it contains everything he's learned in 65 years of acting. He writes, don't nearly die for a role. That's stupid. I was stupid. But do finish what you start. Do show up when it's hard. Do prove you're reliable. The line between these things is thin. You'll know when you cross it because your body will tell you. Mine did. I ignored it. Don't ignore it. But also don't quit just because it's uncomfortable. Discomfort is the job. Danger is stupidity. Learn the difference. He signs it. Still alive at 93? Barely. Good luck. Robert Duvall. What about you? Right now, in your life, in your work, where's your line? Where does commitment end and self-destruction begin? Are you pushing through necessary discomfort or ignoring dangerous signals? Are you being reliable or being reckless? Because Robert Duvall learned something in that Texas heat, learned that commitment matters, that finishing matters, that reliability matters. But he also learned that surviving matters more, that you can't commit to the next role if you're dead from the last one. 115 degrees, 2 hours from collapse to comeback. One stupid, brave, complicated decision. One lesson that's both inspiring and cautionary. Don't be Robert Duvall in Texas, 1988. But also, don't quit just because it's hard. Find your line. Know when to push, know when to protect yourself. Know that commitment and survival aren't opposites. They're the balance every professional needs to find. Robert found his line by crossing it. You don't have to. Learn from his mistake. Learn from his commitment. Learn from both. That's the real lesson from Lonesome Dove. Not the heat, Not the collapse, not the comeback, but the understanding that great work requires sacrifice. Just not the ultimate one. Where's your line? Where's